How does Spider-Man communicate with other heroes when he's out of town? He uses a webcam. Thanks for stopping by my YouTube channel today for this spectacular spider haul video. I'm glad that you're here. If you're new to my channel and haven't subscribed yet, I hope you take this opportunity to do so. Sharing this video and sharing the channel with someone that you think might be interested is another great way to show support. Recently, I've had the chance to add a lot of Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man Bronze Age comic books into my collection. So many so that I've been breaking them up into different videos. This is the third installment of our Spectacular Spider Haul. Today I want to show you about a baker's dozen of books from this title that I've added into my collection, so let's get started. We wrapped up the last video with issue number 31, which was part of the Carrion Saga. That wrapped up that storyline, which I really enjoyed. I had never read before. So we're going to get today's video underway with the next issue, issue number 32, which has this Bob Layton cover. So here we have Spider-Man tackling with another reptile, the rage of the reptile. I'm surprised when I read this book how often Curt Connors is in this, not only as his alter ego, but just as the scientist himself. He's kind of like a supporting character in this story too, and I wasn't expecting that, or I wasn't aware that he was in the book as much as he's in it. So now we go to an Al Milgrom cover for issue number 33. And of course we have a whole bunch of alligators on the bottom. I am not a fan of alligators. Cookie from Just a Little Podcast likes to tease me about that quite frequently. He's a Florida guy too. Where I live, alligators really aren't no concern at all. Where he lives, not quite the same story. But I see an alligator at the zoo and I'll still have nightmares at night. I don't know what it is about them, but they really bother me. These Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man stories have really aged well, I should say. I've really enjoyed these stories, and a lot of these, and I've read every one in this batch that I'm going to be showing you in today's video. I've really enjoyed. And I love the fact that some issues are just single stories. Some are maybe 2-issue stories. Once in a while, you get a little bit longer of a storyline, but not nearly as long as the storylines as they produce in comic books today. But these have aged well, still incredibly enjoyable, or at least I thought so. And when you're dealing with reptiles, of course, and you have Curt Connors in the book, of course, the lizard is going to come back. And here we have Spider-Man, we have the lizard, we have the reptile, we have everyone battling everybody in this story. And this wrapped up this issue's story arc, so 34. So it was a 3-issue story arc in this one. I'm so happy that I had this opportunity to add these books into my collection, and they were affordable. And you know, overall, most of these books aren't too expensive. There's a few keys in the Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man run, but not an abundance of them. It's not that difficult of a collection to put together. And I had a lot of titles or a lot of issues from this title before I had the opportunity to add a lot of these into my collection. But I'm really happy that I found or had this opportunity to get these and put in there, because I certainly have enjoyed them. We're going to jump now to a single story, issue number 35. The villain of this is Mindworm, and I'm not really familiar with this character, but this was a great story. I think Tony Isabella wrote this. It's just a 1 issue, and what I liked about the story is you couldn't quite tell if it really happened or if it was imaginary or something that Peter Parker dreamed. It was really written that way, and even Peter Parker didn't know if it happened or not. And it was just a very well done story, a fun story. And I had a lot of enjoyment reading this. This cover is pretty cool too. This almost reminds me of something that would be kind of posterish, you know, like a poster pose or something like that. Good story, highly recommend this one. So now we move on to issue number 36, and a villain that has always intrigued me a little bit, Swarm. Of course, Swarm is, his body is comprised of a bunch of bees, and he's able to control bees. I think maybe the first, okay, I don't know if it's the, well, maybe it was. I was going to say maybe the first time I ever heard of Swarm, he was a villain in the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon. Do you remember that episode? I always thought that that was such an interesting choice with Spidey having such a big and diverse rogues gallery that they chose Swarm as a villain. So you can check that out on Disney Plus if you've never seen that episode, because I believe that is streaming on there. I brought back some memories too. And I do remember Swarm from the Champions. And in that issue I just showed you, and this issue number 37, they make reference, because I think this is Swarm's first appearance after being in the Champions. And if I'm remembering correctly, in the Champions, he was in issue 14 and 15 as the villain. So, and I remember having at least one of those Champions issues as a kid, and then not getting the other one until just in the last few years. But Swarm, an interesting character, and an interesting one to bring back, and the way that they brought him back to in this two-issue storyline was pretty good. By the way, if you're wondering what era we're in besides just being the Bronze era, right now we're in 1979, and we're in the fall of 1979 with the books that I'm showing you right now. Because the next issue I have to show you is issue number 38, and this is their Halloween 1979 issue, and as you can tell by the cover, Morbius is there, and Morbius actually gets cured in this issue. This is another great one-issue storyline, and just a fun read, enjoyable. They do set up something with one of the supporting characters that plays into the next issue, which I'm about to show you. One of the supporting characters turns into the villain, which is the Schizoid Man. Decent storyline with this too, just fun. As I said, I kind of just found myself, once one of these issues wrapped up, I was anxious to see what the next issue was going to bring, or when, sometimes I read more than one issue a night. I always try to read one comic book a day, but in this case, sometimes I even read a couple of these in one night because I just enjoyed the story so much. So as we keep going along here, we're up to issue number 39, as I mentioned. You probably think, well, up next will be issue number 40. Wrong. Issue number 40 is actually one that I had in my collection already. And I can now say that my YouTube channel goes back far enough that if you want to see the unboxing of when I added issue number 40 into my collection, that's all the way back on Comic Book Editions Volume 7. I got that book from a Comic Jabroni mystery box. Hashtag Comic Jabroni Nation. Sure miss that guy a lot. And I think anytime that we can still talk about Comic Jabroni and just remember him and what a fantastic guy he was to our community, it's a good thing. And I miss him a lot more than my words can express. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to get to know him. If you never had the chance to get to know him, man, did you miss out on a great guy. And he was always up for anything to make you laugh or smile. And yeah, really, really good guy. Gone way too soon, but never forgotten. Issue 41, though, I have, now we're into 1980 with this issue, January of 1980 release. So we have Spider-Man with a guest star, Giant Man, and in this issue, Spidey's like, you're Black Goliath, aren't you? Well, he used to be known as Black Goliath, but in a previous appearance, I think it might have been in a Marvel 2-in-1, he changed his name to Giant Man. And so he corrects him and says, no, I'm not Black Goliath anymore, I'm Giant Man. I've also been surprised a little bit about the amount of guest stars that I've actually seen in these comic books, considering that at the same time there was a designated Spider-Man team-up book, Marvel team-up. There's still some good guest stars. You think that maybe they would only keep the guest stars in that guest star book, since that's the purpose of the book. But I like it if it just makes sense for the story, that they bring them in. This book is a little bit lower grade. I mean, a lot of these books are lower grade. This one's still even a little lower of the lower grades. I might end up upgrading this someday, but if I do, that's awesome. If I don't, it's no big deal either. Let's go to the book that inspired the thumbnail for this video. This is issue number 42, Mike Zeck cover. So here you think that you have Spider-Man battling the Human Torch. At least that's what you think based on the cover. But I'm here to tell you, the Fantastic Four does not appear in this issue. it is one of Spider-Man's rogues. I think it's Electro, if I'm remembering correctly, that is dressed up in disguise as the Human Torch in order to try to ambush Spider-Man at the Statue of Liberty, because that's where Spidey and the Torch always seemed to meet up at when they needed to talk to each other. That kind of was their meeting up place. This book, really good read. It ends on a cliffhanger, and the cliffhanger continues in Fantastic Four 218, which Spider-Man guest stars in. I've had 218 since I was a childhood collector. But outside of the cover, I definitely remember the cover when I looked it up. I don't remember a whole lot about the story, and I didn't go back and read Fantastic Four 218, but I should, because I really liked how this issue played out, and like I said, ended on a big cliffhanger that says it's resolved there. And it is resolved there because when we get to the next issue, issue number 43, there is no mention of anything that happened in issue number 42 at all. So issue number 43 is the introduction, first appearance of a very minor character called Belladonna. She's made a few appearances in the Spider-Man universe. This is a story about the fashion industry, which makes me think of that movie, The Devil Wears Prada. And one of my favorite lines from the movie, The Devil Wears Prada, is where Miranda Priestley, the boss, the lady, played by Meryl Streep, she says something to the effect of, "By all means, move at a glacial pace. You know how that thrills me." When someone's moving slow at work, I don't say it, but in my head, sometimes I think that. Also in this issue, you can tell how times have changed too. There's this character, Roderick Kingsley, and they refer to him as a flaming simp because in 1980, that's as close as you could get to saying that he's gay in a comic book. And I think there's a future Spectacular Spider-Man issue where Roderick shows up again and he's surrounded by some women, and Peter Parker's a little astounded because he was kind of under the assumption that he's gay as well. Going on to issue 44. Okay, now this one was a little bit different for me. We got somebody is killing them all. And this is a mob story. And Marv Wolfman wrote this story, and it's the first of a two-parter, but what's interesting is Marv didn't write the second part of the two-parter. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Then he only wrote the first part. But I was reading this, and this was one of the few ones that I had a hard time kind of getting into. Now, maybe about halfway in the story, Spider-Man kind of says, "Oh, there's a name I recognize." And that gave me a little glimmer of, okay, they're planting a seed here. And on the very last page, that seed plays out and you realize who he was talking about, and it's the Vulture. And the end of this issue really so much reminded me of like the ending of a 1966 episode of Batman with Adam West and Burt Ward, with Spidey stuck in big trouble to be continued. And when we pick up issue number 45, this is just a different perspective, but this is pretty much, the cover looks like what we ended on the last page of the previous issue. So this is the big trouble that he's in. He's tied down. He's about, to be incinerated. And as I said before, just a minute ago too, Wolfman didn't write the second part of the story. Roger Stern wrote this. So I thought that was a little interesting too, that usually I would think that if it's a 2 or 3 part story, that it's the same writer in each part. But in this case, it wasn't. It was Roger Stern who wrote this. Vulture, a character that I have a fair amount of Vulture appearances too in my collection too. And for the longest time, the oldest Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man comic book I had was one that had the Vulture in it. So that's no longer the case, but for a while that was the case, for many decades as a matter of fact. But issue number 45 wraps up what I'm sharing with you in this 3rd edition of our Spectacular Spider Haul. I would love to know which cover was your favorite out of all of the ones I've shown. I have more Spectacular Spider Hauls to share with you. I'll probably do about one a month. At least that's the plan right now. Leave me a comment below and let's comment about what your favorite cover was. If you have any of these books, if you're looking for any of these, if you want to talk about Spider-Man, we can dialogue about this or anything that you want to in that comment section below. Sharing this video or this channel with someone that you think might enjoy it is a great way to show support to my channel. I certainly do appreciate you and your support. I always say I couldn't do this without you, but I wouldn't want to. And that is the truth. Thanks for making it to the end of this Comic Book Editions video, and I will catch you soon. Take care.